Okay, so we're going to do an example problem here, which is suppose that we have some angle between pi over 2 and pi, and we know the sine of that angle is 4 divided by 5. And we want to figure out exact expressions for cosine of theta over 2, sine of theta over 2, and tangent of theta over 2. Okay. So the first thing we got to figure out is what quadrant is theta over 2 going to be in? Well, we know where theta is. It's between 90 and 180, or pi over 2 and pi. So that says that since theta is between pi over 2 and pi, half of theta must be between half of this one and half of that one. It's halfway in between. Halfway between 90 and halfway in between, or half of 90 is 45, so this would be pi over 4. And half of pi is pi over 2. Theta over 2 is halfway between those. Excuse me, not halfway between those. It is somewhere between half of this number and half of that number. Pi over 4 and pi over 2. So what quadrant is that in? Theta was originally in quadrant 2. But theta over 2 is in quadrant, well, pi over 4 is like there, pi over 2 is here. So this is somewhere, theta over 2 is somewhere in here, which is quadrant 1. So this is going to help me answer the sign question I get at the end, which is which root to take. Do I take the positive root or the negative root? I'm going to take the positive root. Okay, so let's write down our formula for these. Cosine of theta over 2, cosine of theta over 2 equals plus or minus the square root of a half 1 plus cosine theta. Okay. Well, I don't know cosine theta, but I do know sine theta, and I know the quadrant that theta is in. So I'm going to be able to find out what cosine theta is from that information. So because sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta equals 1, and sine of theta is 4 over 5, that says that 4/5 squared plus cosine squared equals 1. That's 16 over 25. 25 plus cosine squared theta equals 1. Subtract 16 over 25 from both sides. So cosine squared theta equals 25 minus 16, which is 9. Cosine theta equals plus or minus 3/5. And which root is it? Is it the positive root or the negative root? Remember, theta is in quadrant 2. Cosine is negative in quadrant 2. So that says cosine is negative 3/5. Okay, now that I know the value for cosine, I can just take it and plug it in here and simplify as much as we can. So plus or minus the square root of 1/2 1 minus 3 over 5. So what does this shake out to be? Plus or minus square root of 1/2. 1 minus 3/5 is 2/5. So this is 1/5. After you simplify it all down. This is 2/5 times 1/2 is 1/5. So this equals root 5 over 5. Now, we arrive to this question. Is it the plus or the minus for this root? Well, remember where theta over 2 is. I figured out theta over 2 was in quadrant 1. Because theta was in quadrant 2 and you half the values and you end up being in quadrant 1 somewhere in between pi over 4 and pi over 2. That says that cosine is positive, or this is positive, This one was negative, positive. So cosine is positive, so that means I throw away the negative root and I just get root 5 over 5. Cosine of theta over 2 is root 5 over 5. So there's my answer for cosine. Check. Okay, now let's figure out what sine of theta over 2 is. Sine of theta over 2 is, I can apply the formula, plus or minus the square root of 1/2, 1 minus cosine of theta. And I know what cosine of theta is, it's 3/5. So this is plus or minus the square root of 1/2, 1 plus 3 over 5. Which equals plus or minus the square root. So 5 plus 3 is 8. So this is 1/2 times 8/5, which simplifies to, what do we get? 2 over 5, 2 over root 5. 2 over square root 5, which is 2 root 5 over 5. Okay, and now we come to this question, do we take the plus root or the minus root? Well, since theta over 2 is in quadrant 1, where both cosine and sine are positive, that means my answer is the positive root. So I can throw the negative root away and just take the positive answer. That's sine of theta over 2. Okay. Lastly, to find the tangent, well, I can take my answers for sine and cosine and divide them, or I can use the formula. I'll use the formula in this case because we've done the dividing already. It's not too hard to divide answers for sine and cosine, but let's just do the formula and see what we get. If you look now, it should jump out at you that the answer is 2, but let's actually check and see that that's the case. I'm going to erase this one. So, tangent of theta over 2 equals sine theta over 1. So 1 plus cosine theta. Ooh, now I have to think. Look back at my notes. Sine theta over, I had it written on the board earlier. When in doubt, look it up on the internet. You can always look these up on the internet, children. Sine over 1 plus cosine. Great. Great. Forever memorialized. I forgot that identity. All right, so sine of theta over 1 plus cosine of theta. We plug in our values for sine theta and for cosine theta. Sine theta is 4 over 5, so this equals 4/5 divided by 1 minus 3/5, which is 4/5 divided by 2/5, which is 4 divided by 2. And there are all of our answers for sine, cosine, and tangent. I erased the cosine one. The cosine, cos of theta over 2, we already had it down. That was equal to root 5 over 5. Sweet. And that's how you apply this half-angle identity.